Hey, what's up everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. All right, so I still have yet to address my mock draft, NBA mock draft. Like I said, the whole situation with Hurley kind of threw me off as a Laker fan, but I have been trying to glance back at people's mocks and stuff like that, try to get a gauge of what's going on. And I just really think, I've told you guys this before, that I think the Rockets are going to trade their pick. But I actually think they should trade their pick. And there's a couple teams I think should trade down, to be honest with you. Trade up, trade down. Toronto should trade up, in my opinion. Try to get a better pick than what they have, because they really are a rebuilding situation. And the pick that they could get could be solid. Like, I know Zach Edey's from Toronto or from somewhere in Canada. Maybe you want to go and bring the hometown kid home, but is that really the development piece that you want to bring in? Next to Quickly, next to RJ, it's kind of... I'm not saying it's a bad fit, but it's not the fit that I would want for my team if I were doing something like that. So for me, I would probably want to trade up. Maybe even try to get that Rockets pick if at all possible. Maybe toss them something, whatever would be possible. Try to get that third overall pick. And then bring myself Donovan Clingan if I were them. Or... because their center position, I know they had Chris Boucher. I don't know if he's still there. Jakob Poeltl, I'm not in love with Jakob Poeltl. In theory, they could take a center like Edey, but you would probably want somebody a little more like Clingan to try to move forward with, to kind of anchor your defense. In fact, there's a lot of teams that probably should want Clingan, that maybe have their eyes on him. But I think a team like Toronto kind of makes some sense, or maybe even want a better upside piece. Maybe you like a Tijan Salon, or... I don't think you put Dillingham next to Quickly necessarily, but it could be kind of fun. You know what I mean? You're definitely going to kick some tail. Probably not the best for defense, probably not the best for winning situations, but for a team that wants to rebuild, you might strike it rich and have like one of the best backcourts in the game if Dillingham turns into what he could turn into and Quickly continues developing the way he is. So not something I would necessarily do, but it could be something fun, since they're not going to be winning anytime soon. I think that the Toronto Raptors should definitely consider moving up if at all possible. Now, another thing I think should be done is the Memphis Grizzlies probably moving their moving their pick either up or down, because the range that they're in kind of keeps them in no man's land. And I think a lot of the players that they're going to have an opportunity to get are probably going to be players they can get a little further back if they move back and try to turn their pick into another second rounder or something like that. At the end of the day, they were hoping to tank this past year with the circumstances that fell in their lap, and ultimately they ended with the 9th pick. Now, they could get Clingan at that pick in theory, but you can also see opportunities, as I said, where Clingan could go elsewhere, and Memphis really could use Clingan. When you look at their depth chart and what they have going on, yeah, man, there's a need for a center there, and you want that center. Don't let that go by. You want that center to be somebody who can play some defense, somebody that probably fills the role that Steven Adams used to play. Maybe somebody who can kind of step in and carry the torch from what you're used to with Marc Gasol, and I think Clingan is kind of that guy. Now, as you guys know, I was early on not a big fan of Clingan. To be honest with you, I'm still not a big fan of him, but I respect exactly what he does. He sets good screens, he makes good passes, he rebounds the ball, he plays excellent defense, rim protector, somebody that you can say has a high floor. Maybe not a massive ceiling, but a very high floor and a winning pedigree. He's won everywhere he's been, so you have to assume a team like the Memphis Grizzlies that already has their core and their stars in place would want to bring that piece to their situation to solidify who they are. Plus, it gives them more flexibility for Jaren Jackson rather than rendering him a 5, It could kind of bring him back to the 4 for which his skill set allows for. And then you think about the defense him and Clingan can provide themselves with them both on the floor at the same time. That could potentially vault them into a championship type contender. So I think they should try to move up to get Clingan, or move down if they're going to settle for a different center, because a lot of the guys that they probably would otherwise want, like Yves Messi, potentially could be there if they move down. So rather than kind of be in that tweener spot where most of these, where their pick is going to be moving toward getting guards, unless you're going to reach down. It's going to be guards there more than likely. So I don't know that they really need another guard. You could mock them another guard, but I wouldn't necessarily do that. Also, the Charlotte Hornets, I don't know if they love the spot they're in, because obviously if you pay attention to their roster, they have plenty of guards. And the guard that could potentially play a good shooting guard role doesn't want to be a shooting guard in Castle. So he has the height, the defense, and all of that kind of brings those guys together, brings Miller and Melo together. But the problem is he don't want to play the role. So while that is a perfect spot for him, he don't see it that way. And you don't want to bring a guy to Charlotte if he's not going to be happy to be there, let alone the fact that it is Charlotte. You know what I mean? But even more so that he's going to be playing a role he doesn't want to play. So for me, that's the range that he's likely expected to go. All the other shooting guards are offensive shooting guards in that range. Or you're going to take a guy that probably you could get if you move further down. So I don't know if that's the best range to be in if you're the Charlotte Hornets. Maybe you move up to solidify an opportunity to get a guy like Reece Shea. Put him next to Miller and move Miller to the 2. And now you got a lethal shooting spacing nightmare for the teams to have to deal with. Maybe you bring yourself Clingan instead if with that 6th spot, if he's available. Hurt some teams' hearts and make it so that they can't get the guy that they would otherwise want. But for me, it's like it depends on how much you love their center position right now. They do have a guy like Nick Richards in place. They do have the other guy whose name's not coming to mind. But the thing about it is, the guy who's not coming to mind, you can afford to put another center next to him. Somebody who's only going to render him playing 20 minutes a game. Clingan is known for only playing 25 minutes a game. So it probably makes a lot more sense to try to put those 2 centers together so you can have that dynamic on the floor at all times. So I don't hate that for the Charlotte Hornets if they did decide to take Clingan, because I think at the end of the day, it's a better fit than people think. And he probably is a better center than who they have in place. And Nick Richards is a free agent and a role player, so they could probably use the center depth, to be honest with you. Same thing with the Detroit Pistons. Jalen Duren is a young center who can't stretch the floor, so the last thing you want to do is bring yourself a regular, non-floor spacing traditional center like Clingan and slap him next to Duren. But you can have that same dynamic that I just described where one of them plays 20 minutes, the other plays 20 minutes. You don't expect both of them to play 82 games. So it's like you probably want the center depth. I know you probably don't want to use that high of a pick on a center like that. But the reality is that's kind of the range these teams are in. The Rockets can, in theory, do the same thing. Because even though you love Sengun, he is coming off a massive injury. And you would like to think that he can be a superstar going forward, but you probably be best in the short term to have somebody next to him just in case he needs a breather. You have elite defense on the floor. And since they have depth at every other position, if they're not going to trade the pick, that's not the worst thing to do in the world. So, all these teams, the problem that I'm seeing is a lot of these teams in this top 10 range don't need the stuff that's available to them. So they like to probably move down to get the most out of what it is their value pick is. Preferably before the draft starts, so it'd be worth more. So that whoever you trade the pick to in these situations have the opportunity to choose who they want. That's likely a more valuable circumstance. So that's how I look at it. I think half of those teams at the top should trade. The Atlanta Hawks, I don't think they're going to trade their pick because they haven't had the first overall pick since the 70s, and I don't think they'd ever had it before that. So a team that usually doesn't get the first overall pick, likely is going to value just the nature of having it so they can say they took it at some point in time in history. I think the thing about it is, though, if I'm being real, Oliver Sarr, isn't it? Alexandre Sarr, based on what I've heard, because I haven't really not done a lot of homework on him, as I told you guys, I'm just not that interested in doing much homework on that particular player because he is considered first overall. Now I'm starting to realize that there's more that I need to know in listening to people who have studied him. In other words, he's not a scorer. He had a bad offensive year last year. He is a defensive player, probably like Evan Mobley or the likes of Jaren Jackson with lesser body weight right now. He'll develop, and he should be good. But is that what the Atlanta Hawks need? And then Zachary Reese-Shea, not known for creating for himself, although he's probably better at that than people are saying he is. But at the end of the day, he does have some fantastic defensive ability, and I think can help Atlanta on the wing. But if they're thinking about moving point guards, or if they want to remove both of those point guards, you don't probably have the dynamic that he can benefit from as much. Same thing I said about him going to Washington. Unless you have that point guard in place, you're not going to get the most out of that player on the offensive end. So it's like, do you move that pick if you're Atlanta? From what I understand, they love Clingan. Do you draft Clingan with the first overall pick, or do you trade down and try to see if you can get Clingan with maybe somebody else's pick? Same thing with the Pistons. If I'm the Pistons, I want the first overall pick. I could surely use Reece Shea if I'm the Pistons. You know what I mean? But in the 5th range, do I get who I want? Probably not. Maybe I settle for a Mateus Buzelis. Although I hear the Chicago Bulls are interested in Mateus Buzelis, or Matas, I think I'm saying it wrong. Matas Buzelis. I think the Bulls are interested in him because he's from Chicago. And that could be an interesting player because I think that the best position for them to fill right now is forward. But all in all, if I'm being honest with you guys, I just don't love these teams' positioning. I think they shouldn't love their positioning. I think Detroit should obviously want the first overall pick. I think Atlanta doesn't necessarily need Sarr or Reece Shea. I think the Rockets are in a position where they definitely don't need the 3rd overall pick. The last thing they really need is another player that they have to demands minutes. You already got too much depth with too many lottery picks that you've picked over the last several years. Getting a guy like who's that they got last year? Cam Whitmore just made it even more difficult to find time for all these dudes. You got Terry Eason, you got Green, you got Sengun, you got Smith. So it's like they don't really have positions they can fill. You paid Brooks all this money. If I'm them, I'm probably moving that contract. You got Eamon Thompson. You got Fred VanVleet. So that's another thing. A lot of people are talking about Reed Sheppard going to the Rockets. You do understand they already got Reed Sheppard and Fred VanVleet. That's like his comp right there. So do I really need to double down on that position? Maybe I move Fred VanVleet if I'm bringing in Reed Sheppard, but Reed Sheppard's not ready to be Fred VanVleet. He's just going to be him tomorrow. So it's like, I don't necessarily love Reed Sheppard for the Rockets anymore. I think about what ultimately is in store for his role there. I want Reed Sheppard in Washington, just like I want all these little guards in Washington. But Washington's likely going to take Reece Shea, which is fine because they can use a forward. But the point is not about what they need. It's about what the other teams around them don't need. They're the only team that could really use a point guard besides the Spurs, who I think should take Topic with their 8th pick, but you risk him not being there. You feel me? Like somebody like Charlotte or Detroit may mess around and just take Topic, even though I don't think it would be best for Detroit. But you get the point. There's no guarantee if you let Topic sit past 4 that you get it. So if it's valuable that they get Topic, even though I don't think you should take him at 4, I think it's a chance he's not there at 8. That's a real thing. I think it's a chance. I don't know how good that chance is, but it's a chance, especially when you consider the Portland Trailblazers and their plethora of guards, but the ability for them to move on from a guard and the ability to identify that Scoot Henderson may not necessarily be ready. Or you could play him at the 2, even though he's a little short. He's stocky and he has a lot of muscle. So it's like, can I use Topic if I'm the Blazers? Probably not the best place for him. But the point is, do you want to take the risk that they won't do something like that? If you're the Spurs and you let him drop from 4 to 8, thinking you're just going to get him an 8, I don't know he's going to be there. A lot of people like Ron Holland. The things that I've seen from Ron Holland tell me that Ron Holland is a bit of a project. I know people are high on his ability to dunk the ball and play some defense, and so am I. But is his shot coming around? Does he have turnover issues with his handle? I don't really know. I have more Ron Holland homework to do, but the point is, based on the little that I've seen, I'm not hype about Ron Holland the way a lot of people are. I'm really not hype about him. I'm actually more hype about Tijan Salon than I am about Ron Holland. Now, that's based on me doing more homework on Salon and liking what I'm seeing. Now, I understand Salon is also a development project. I do not expect him to come in and be who I'm drafting him to be tomorrow or even next year, which is why he's probably going to slip in the draft for me, even though I'm high on him. He's probably not going to go before 10 for me. But that don't mean I don't like him a lot. It just means that if I don't have a development situation like Utah or a potential rebuilding situation like Chicago, and I'm probably going to let that dude slide. These are the things we're thinking about. You know, I like this team overall. I mean, this draft class overall. Some of the guys in the back of the draft I like a little more than the guys with higher upside. I think they can help a little better. I think they probably have a safer floor in some of the back of the draft guys, but you don't want to pass on upside. And that's really what gets in the way of what we're looking at here. As it pertains to, I don't think this guy is that great, but I'm gonna take him anyway because at least he's somebody that we've seen a lot of footage of, as opposed to a Dadier. Maybe we ain't seen enough footage on, even though he looks like he's gonna be a stud. So it's a lot of stuff like that that makes me wonder how this draft is ultimately going to pan out in historically, because I do think that some of those guys in the back of the draft today look like they're going to be better than some of the guys in the front of the draft today, to me. Filipowski, I think we're getting to a point where Kyle Filipowski may be underrated at this point. I don't like him no more than anybody else does, but I'm afraid we're starting to let him slip a little further than he probably should be. So it's time to just get back into form as it pertains to studying Filipowski and not letting his weaknesses override what his strengths could be, no different than we would anybody else. I think his weaknesses and him getting pushed around by bigger players is doing a little too much in regards to making it so that people don't like him in this round. You're supposed to assess positive things and negative things, and I think with a guy like Filipowski, where I would try him is at the 3 spot, just like Markkanen was done with. If you move him to the 3 and he doesn't have to push around with bigger guys, suddenly he has a height advantage and a length advantage. And if he can't stretch the floor the way he's expected to be able to, maybe you can get a little more out of him at the 3. I know he's considered a 5, but he's a little too small to play the 5. I know he's considered a 4, but he might be a little too small in the back pocket to play the 4. But what if you try him at 3 a little bit, since he's supposed to be able to stretch the floor? And since he has so much issues with guys that can kind of body him up and strong arm him a little bit. So I don't know. I just think that Filipowski is a player who everybody is down on, even though the mocks have him up in the like 15, 16 range. I think most people kind of want him to slip all the way to 30. And I just think he's probably in between there. He probably should be taken in the early 20s, 21, 22, New Orleans, somebody like that. So we'll see. I definitely do not expect my Lakers to take him. I would leave him on the board for the Lakers based on our needs and what else is on the board. But I don't want people to start thinking, yo, Filipowski should go in the 2nd round. He's going to be the best 2nd round pick in the draft if you let that happen. So, you know, I've been down on Filipowski, but not nearly as down as everybody else. It gets to a point where it's like, all right, now we're starting to underrate somebody while trying to find the best place to put him. And everybody doesn't think he should be up high, but you don't want to push him down too far. So that's what I think of Filipowski. It's just getting to a point where it's like, all right, man, I think people are expecting him to be worse than I think he actually is going to be. So that's really what it is, man. Hard to gauge a lot of these dudes. Hard to like them if they go into certain situations. Dillingham, I think it's more understood what it is that I thought could be possible, which is that he's going to fall. I think it's highly possible he's taken after 10 or at 10 with Utah. Just most of these teams don't need guards, and there's several guards that you may like a little more than him. Now, with Topic injury in place, you may see an opportunity for Dillingham to go early, or than what I'm saying here, but I think people are going to take a chance with Topic anyway because he's one of the best passers in the draft, and he's a big guy. He's big. He's like 6'8", something like that, 6'7", and puts a lot of pressure on the rim when he's healthy, but how much is that injury going to take away from that, and will this be a reoccurring thing with his knees? If so, you definitely don't want to take him. Like, that's the question. It's not about does he fit as a piece. It's about if you bring him in, will you regret it because he starts having injury issues so early in his career. It's the same thing with McCullough. I think his name's McCullough. So another player I like a lot from Kansas, next something. You bring him in, he's already had like 2 or 3 injuries as a rookie. Before he even gets into the league, that could be a problem. You don't want that situation to ultimately haunt you later in bringing a guy like that in. So that's really the thing. We watched Whitehead go last year to the Brooklyn Nets with one of the few picks they have in their entire chest, and he didn't play in a year. He probably ain't going to play this year too with the 2 foot surgeries in a row. I mean, that was foreseeable. You definitely let a guy like that fall to the 2nd round. You definitely don't waste a 1st round pick on a player who already has injury issues and multiple surgeries and stuff like that. So that's just my point of view. Sometimes it works out for teams. Obviously, it worked out very well for the Denver Nuggets and Porter, but that's an outlier. I don't think that's the norm. That's not what you should expect. So, yeah, man, we're just making sure we cover our bases in regards to viewing people properly as we get closer to this draft. Because some of these guys are overrated based on how people want to move them up, and some of these guys are underrated based on how people want to move them down. There's a few players that I really liked early in this draft that I've done a little more homework on and kind of cooled off on a little bit. Tristan DeSilva's one of them. Tristan DeSilva's one of them. He's good. But I don't know if I take him at 17, depending on who's on the board with him. Because at the end of the day, his ceiling's not super high, and he's not really great at anything. He can shoot the ball, but his handle is not where it needs to be. So it's, his defense is good, but he's not overly quick to where he can't guard some of the Kevin Durant's and stuff like that. So it's like, if I'm bringing him in to be my 7th or 8th best guy, I'm probably not going to use my 17th overall pick on him when there could be a guy that can be my 3rd or 4th best guy in that range. So that's the problem I have with Tristan DeSilva. I like him, but I just think that his ceiling is capped off rather low. His floor is high, and he's going to help a piece. But I'm kind of drafting him to be my Rick Fox. You know what I mean? I'm kind of drafting him to be Devin George for those of old Laker fans. Like, that's the kind of piece that I think he's ultimately going to be. A guy, just a guy. You know what I mean? And so if I'm in the 17 range and the 16, 18 range where it's likely he's going to go, I'm not going to draft just a guy. I'd rather get somebody with some upside. Like Saloon could potentially be on the board, or Salone, however you say his name. In some mocks I've seen Ron Holland fall behind him. Like that's crazy. That's not going to happen, man. So I'm kind of moving him behind guys like Bub Carrington. He's in the Tyler Smith range, which I think he's already in that range, but it's a little further back. I'm not taking him at 17 like he's mocked anymore. I know Laker fans are like, what are you talking about? We love him, and we do. But I'm not taking him over Holmes. I'm not taking him over some of these guys. I'll take him when Edie goes. That's kind of where it is. If he goes 24, 23, New Orleans, something like that, I can take him there. But as far as me being excited about taking him in the teens, not anymore. Not with the homework that I've further done. He's not going to be that. He can stretch the floor, he can space the floor, but he's a role player, you know what I mean? Not in the mold of slow-mo Kyle Anderson, but like that's who he's going to be. He's going to be in that range. Not your best guy. Maybe you're starting small forward. You know what I mean? Prime, and it's going to be a lot of Laker fans who aren't going to agree with this, but prime Taurean Prince. Like Taurean Prince when he played for the Cleveland Cavaliers, or Taurean when he played for Atlanta. Really good, but like capped off, you know what I mean? So that's kind of how I see Tristan DeSilva. Good player, but not probably somebody you want to take when you have guys with upside at his position also in the range. Who else? Tyler Kolek needs to go to the Phoenix Suns. Just like I said last year in regards to what's our guy in the finals right now, the center? Can't think of his name. But the guy that I said they needed to take it 10 last year. If they don't take him, they're not doing their job. That's kind of how I feel about Tyler Kolek and the Phoenix Suns. If Tyler Kolek is on the board, the Phoenix Suns at 23, you need a point guard, probably more so than anybody else in the draft. You don't have the assets to trade up at all. I don't think a better point guard is going to be available to you, because I think guys like Bub Carrington are probably going to be gone already. So you're going to have to reach to the second round range to get a point guard in the range that you're in. Unless you can scrounge up some assets for which I don't think you have to move up to get a point guard, you need to address that right now if you're the Phoenix Suns. All this other stuff, fluff, getting, Zach Edey or something because of his name on it, that stuff is trash. You need a point guard. You can't keep asking Bradley Beal and Devin Booker to play the point guard position without some facilitator in place. You need that facilitator, and he should be available at 23, whatever your range is. So that's something that needs to be said. There's a lot of people who may want to take Tyler Kolek earlier than that. I'm fine with that. But he should not be available to the Knicks. He should not be available to the Knicks. The Suns need to get that player off the board. You don't need to be drafting anything else. No shooting guards, no Tristan DeSilvas. You got plenty of small forwards and shooting guards. Your center position is not as imperative that you address it at all. You need a point guard. And so I'm seeing a lot of people mocking the Phoenix Suns doing a lot of different stuff. But this whole Bradley Beal, Booker point guard experiment is garbage. And it needs to stop. It needs to stop now. So that's what I'm saying. Lively was who I was referring to. Just like I was telling y'all last year, Dallas needs to take Lively. This year, Phoenix needs to take Kolek. They need to. And so if they don't, they should be shaming themselves, in my opinion. And so these are the type of things that we're thinking about, man. If they had the assets, I'd tell them to trade them and get somebody else. But I just don't think they have those assets. They have no picks between now and like 2030, both second and first round picks. And their assets, their players, they're not gonna get you a pick. They're not. So with the one pick that they have, the only pick that they got for the next 6 years, is definitely somebody they need to do something good with. And if not, then just blow it up, man. I really think the Phoenix Suns' only real path is to blow it up, whether they believe it or not. Trade Kevin Durant, trade Devin Booker for picks and start over. That's really the only path they actually have, but Ishbia ain't going for that. We know Ishbia ain't going for that. So Tyler Kolek is the pick for Phoenix if he's there. And if not, then you do need to reach down and get a point guard in that second round range. Maybe even trade down for 2 second rounders, get your first round pick, turn it into something more, because you can't afford to do anything else stupid, Phoenix. Honestly, you can't afford it. So yeah, these are the thoughts that I'm thinking about, man. So many teams in these ranges that they are not best to be in are likely going to want to reach down for players that they could just very easily trade down and get more value for the pick. So that's something that I always preach. It needs to be done in this situation, I believe. So yeah, man, that's what I got to say. Even the Lakers, to be honest with you, even the Lakers could trade down from 17. I don't think, like the Phoenix Suns, we have the assets to trade up in theory, unless we're doing something we have no business doing. But I could be wrong. You might be able to find somebody that values something that you're willing to give up and will be willing to give you that pick for something. Maybe you take on a bad contract, give up Gabe Vincent, add 17 and try to get like 14 or something. That might be possible. I don't know. But that's the type of thing I would be looking to do if I'm the Lakers, if I can, and then move up and get a higher quality rookie, or move down and get Holmes, who will probably be available at like 23, 24. Well, if people like Holmes as much as I do, you probably should take him at 17. But right now, looking at mocks, you may be able to get him if you trade down a little bit. Maybe you do something like that. Maybe you trade with a team and get something. I don't know, but I think the Lakers at 17 could be okay. Just value the range that you're in properly. That's all I tell him. A lot of times with most mocks that I'm seeing right now, you're going to be able to take a guy like McCain maybe at 17. And every time I find myself picking McCain, I'm happy that I have him, but I still haven't addressed something that I know is difficult to address, which is the big man position. So do I leave McCain on the board? I also don't think I'm going to be happy leaving McCain on the board if he's going to be what I believe he's going to be, or leaving Anthony Carter on the board if he's going to be what I believe he's going to be. I don't feel comfortable doing that to take a Khalil Ware, who probably he has some limitations to what you expect him to become, even though his upside's really up there. His floor is on the ground, like because of his motor and because of his overall strength and the power that he plays with, which isn't what his body should otherwise look like it should be able to do. So now, more I learn about Khalil Ware, the less I feel good about him. I've always wanted Holmes more on the team than Khalil, but now I feel even more strongly about that. The more homework I do on both of those players. So these are the things that we're thinking about, man. We're just adjusting our rankings for these players. That's why I wanted to take my time in doing my mock draft, because there's still so much to learn about a lot of these guys. And some of these dudes I just thought were the best thing in the world. The more I start digging into the homework and start listening to more of the experts, the more I realize that maybe they ain't what I thought, or maybe it's understood that some of those players should be taken a little further back, and some of the other guys that are behind them should be taken a little sooner. Like I told you, Baylor Shireman, Pacome Dadier, Trenton Flowers, those are players I really like. I like them a lot more than your Filipowskis and Tyler Smith, even though a lot of people love Tyler Smith. I've heard a lot about Tyler Smith I didn't like. So it's a lot of stuff there that just, we're adjusting our rankings on this channel, trying to figure out where we think these guys should go. And in a lot of situations, some of these guys you're going to have to reach for. If you're a team like Phoenix, you reach down to get Kolek. You don't let them drop to New York. You don't let them drop to Minnesota. If you're Minnesota, if you can, I would move up. Now, I do like the idea of Minnesota getting above Carrington, but he shouldn't be on the board. Tyler Kolek shouldn't be on the board. You probably need a better pick. Now, I don't know that they have the assets to get that pick. That's the problem. Just like the Phoenix Suns, I don't know that Minnesota has any flexibility to do something like that. But for me, I've said this once and I'll say it now. I want them to get Isaiah Collier, a big guard that can stick next to Anthony Edwards, somebody that can drive at the rim, put pressure on the rim, shot should develop, could be a part of a good defense, but would be best in a defensive scheme like Minnesota's. He would thrive there, and he could play right away, and his upside is really high. And for a team that doesn't have a lot of assets, that's what you want. So in the best case scenario, he drops and falls all the way down, but it's more likely a team like Portland takes him at 14 or something like that, or even my Lakers may take him, even though I don't like him for us. Overall, he's a hell of a piece, and if he turns into his highest upside version of himself, maybe you're getting a really nice big guard. You know what I mean? Maybe you get a really nice big guard. I don't want to overstate the name, but there are nice big guards that have some of his skill set that can really do good things. And if he develops, he might be one of those guys. So for me, I'd love for Minnesota, who doesn't have a lot of assets, to go try to find a way to acquire Isaiah Collier and bring him to Anthony Edwards. That's a really good thing for you. If not, take Bub Carrington. If Kolek is available, of course, you want to take a point guard, in my opinion. Although there is a good argument for getting a center in Minnesota, because they do have so much money poured into the center position that I think someday they're going to have to get rid of one of those three centers. Gobert, Towns, or Nas. One of them dudes going to have to go. So you might want to have a center on a rookie contract. That's a really good point that I heard someone else mention. That's not a bad idea, and other teams need to be thinking that way too in certain situations. Having a rookie contract can give you a lot of flexibility to move a guy, man. A guy like Karl Towns may be able to get you 3 and 4 first rounders. You need that, Minnesota, whether you know it or not. So if you get a good center or a solid center that can be in that rotation that's on a rookie contract, it could probably help with you being able to feel good about moving a player like that. So that's something I'm thinking about if I'm Minnesota. I'm thinking about flexibility. I got to be able to be flexible enough for year 6, 7, 8, 9 of Anthony Edwards. And because of the moves they made last year, they don't have that flexibility. It's not there. So these are the things that we're thinking about, man. I don't know if they want to mail it in on what they have because they got so far into the playoffs this year, but I don't think their ceiling is any higher as a group right now. And Anthony Edwards is somebody you definitely want to keep forever. So he's going to need flexibility. He's going to need that. So, yeah, these are the things that we're thinking about, man. I'm pretty much set in regards to my thoughts. I know I could probably go on forever because all of these teams have needs. But I'll leave it at that. I appreciate everybody for watching BDF 44, and I'm out.